TV was once the dominant entertainment force for decades. Most people were gathered around their TV as opposed to a computer or a phone screen. Will it ever reach that level of greatness again? We'll talk about it in just a second here. When I was growing up, TV was absolutely phenomenal. There was so much variety in terms of channels, in terms of what was on. It was great. Although we complained because there wasn't a whole lot of new stuff for long periods of time. We always used to say, oh, there's nothing on TV, and we would get bored. But what we didn't realize was we had a wealth, an absolute wealth of programming. There was times where networks were showing things from so many different eras, stuff that you would have never seen before that was 30, 40, 50, 60, some odd years old. And it was great. Disney used to have a program called the Disney Vault, which I completely forgot about until I started looking up old early 2000s Disney promos and commercials. And what they used to do is play old Disney movies and old television shows late at night. And it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. It was stuff that was completely foreign to my generation. It didn't last for very long, but I mean, it was back when Disney actually cared about its collective properties, and the Disney Channel was a showcase for literally everything. And that was also back when the Disney Channel original movies felt like they were at their peak. They were producing tons and tons of them, and they were all of significant quality, even though they had basically a shoestring budget. They were producing all sorts of original sitcoms and a couple animated series, and it was fun, but they were still an embrace of the Disney brand. It was great. And then on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, I mean, do I even need to say it? In the late 90s, early 2000s, they were at their peak. Nickelodeon was already riding high in the 90s. They basically started the whole idea of a dedicated network for kids and families, and they were riding high on that. And in the early 2000s, it was only continuing, and they had a new hit in the form of something called SpongeBob SquarePants, and then later on with Fairly Odd Parents and Jimmy Neutron. They were building up a solid stable of Nicktoons that rivaled what they had in the 90s. And they still had some of them from the 90s that were rerunning. And they had ones that were still making new episodes. In the early 2000s, Rugrats was still going. I think it went till about 2005. So that ran for pretty long. But they were also introducing new animated series like Rocket Power and As Told by Ginger and Wild Thornberrys, and later on Danny Phantom and My Life as a Teenage Robot. Then over on Cartoon Network you had Toonami and Magoozy. You had entire television blocks of different genres, but you also had the Hanna-Barbera classics for a long time in the early 2000s, and then you ended up getting more Cartoon Network original series. Once they closed down Hanna-Barbera Studios, it became Cartoon Network Studios. You started getting shows like Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, but then you went into Grim and Evil, which became Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and then later Evil Con Carne. And then you got Courage the Cowardly Dog. You got Ed, Edd n Eddy, one of my all-time favorites. You got Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. You got all of the dubbed anime on Toonami, and then on Magoozy you got some of the French dubbed animation, and there was so much variety everywhere you went. You went over to ABC Family, you were getting a lot of those older sitcoms, and then they started to develop some of their original series towards the end of them being called ABC Family, and really went downhill, unfortunately. But Discovery was riding high. You know, they had a lot of really educational programming throughout their networks, and then TLC devolved into reality nonsense, as most things did. You know, when TV went downhill, it went downhill. It didn't survive the 2010s. The 2010s, by that time, most people had gone to YouTube, and reality was pretty much dominating TV thanks to the earlier writer strikes of, I think, was it 2008, 2007? I think it was 2008. I was moving at that time, so I had no idea, and the internet was still not that ubiquitous yet. I mean, it was definitely a major thing, and YouTube was, but nowhere near what it is today. So I wasn't paying any attention to any of that sort of thing, but that's what led rise to things like Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which a lot of people consider to be the pinnacle of the end of what was once great television. Understandably so, because now we're watching this scripted reality series that people are buying as authentic and organic, and it's really not, and it's terrible. And then Jersey Shore, stuff that we used to make fun of back in the day, stuff that was just lame and terrible. But that became the standard. It exploded in popularity all across the board. MTV became the reality TV network. The old MTV that had music and animation was just dead. And everywhere just felt like reality TV here, reality TV there, especially on the lower networks. Your letter networks started to become filled with reality TV contest shows and all of that garbage. Extreme Home Makeover, which turned out to be a horrible behind-the-scenes show. You had TLC, you had Little People, Big World, which, I mean, look at how broken that family is now. I mean, it just became terrible. And now we're where we're at today, where there's barely any, outside of, again, reality television, there's barely anything scripted produced. And most of the stuff that is very generic when it comes to animation, and sitcoms barely exist anymore. I think they've all been kicked to streaming. So, with all of the downfall of television, with all of the decline in overall television across both linear and streaming, will TV ever be great again? Can it ever be great again? My answer is I think it absolutely can. But it's going to take a lot of strategizing on the part of the networks and streaming services. There needs to be synergy between the two. I've talked about this dozens of times, and they are doing this now. It does seem like Disney, Paramount, and Warner are all doing that. They're all simulcasting most of their popular shows. But it still feels like streaming is the priority, and linear broadcast gets next to nothing, even though they're making more ad revenue, I think, than they are with the subscriptions to streaming, because people just subscribe temporarily, and then that's it. Whereas people are locked into their linear TV because they pay such a heavy price. They're locked in, and they can just watch reruns of some of their longtime favorite shows. Linear TV, that's the other thing. You have to understand that linear TV is not obsolete. I have heard linear TV be called obsolete dozens of times, dozens of different videos, and I always shake my head at it because it's like saying radio is obsolete. Back when TV came out, oh, that's it for the radio's done for. Video killed the radio star. And yet look at radio now. It's bigger than it's ever been. Even radio dramas have come back. Scripted radio programming has made a massive comeback. It's just not old-fashioned anymore and on those old bands. It's all HD and digital and online and on satellite. But it's still there. People still have radios in their car that they listen to. It's not on top of the world like it once was. It's the same with theater. People thought with movies, well, in-person theater is obsolete. No, people still go to see theater productions. Broadway is still as big as it's ever been. And it's the same with linear broadcast television. If linear broadcast television ever disappears, that'll be a critical mistake because that was groundbreaking technology. It was as groundbreaking as the radio. You can't get rid of linear broadcast because at the end of the day, there's always going to be an audience for it because it offers an experience that you can't get from anything else. You can't really get that from the internet. You can't get that from streaming. You can only get that specific presentation and experience from linear broadcast. So I think what needs to happen in the future, and I think what's already happening, is you need to add more technology to the linear broadcast to make it more appealing. And they're already doing that. They're combining on-demand elements. Nickelodeon, whenever Nickelodeon is on, they always push for being able to catch up with a season on demand. They don't point you to Paramount Plus. They just say watch it on demand on your given TV provider. That's great. That's what they should be doing. I'm not saying that they shouldn't point people to Paramount Plus, but if you're already subscribed to a linear TV service, then having on-demand works great because it's basically just like having a streaming service at that point. And they know that there's going to be a lot of people who miss something when it comes on because a lot of people don't have access to watch that linear broadcast. It's crazy to me that we can watch linear broadcast TV on our phones. I think that's absolutely insane and awesome. I would have given anything for that growing up. But in order to make TV great again, you have to strengthen linear television and streaming. You have to strengthen the genres that you've been neglecting. You have to strengthen sitcoms. You have to strengthen animated series. You have to create game shows. And you have to create visual identity for the linear networks and even for the streaming services when they have tiered ads. You have to run all sorts of really fun and colorful and bright promos with good logos and designs and all of that fun stuff. You have to create blocks for linear TV again. You know, in order for TV to become great again, you have to take advantage of the new technology, and you have to promote the crap out of your shows and programs. You do. If you don't do that, then people aren't going to watch. If you're not on YouTube promoting your stuff, if people are watching YouTube and they're not seeing ads for new programs from any given network or streaming service, they're not going to know it's even happening, because they're not going to go look for it themselves. If they're not subscribed to a streaming service or a linear TV service and they're just on YouTube and TikTok, they're not going to go and suddenly subscribe to this thing, be it linear TV or streaming or some combination thereof. I think the two should combine into one. I really do. I think the future is going to be linear and streaming combining into one overall platform where you have both. And also the fast TV services for people who can't afford that. I think the fast TV services are one of their best sources of revenue. Now, there are some people who think that what they'll do is eventually they'll abandon the linear network model entirely and go to the fast TV, which is still linear TV. And then that will become the new linear TV, and streaming will be combined into that, which is basically like the model that I just presented beforehand, except you're not getting your service from a provider like a Sling or a YouTube or a Hulu, or your cable or satellite provider like a DirecTV or an Xfinity or a Time Warner. You're getting it from the studios themselves. And I don't think the studios themselves want to take on those expenses. I really don't. Because I think what they're finding with the streaming services is that it's cheaper to just distribute your stuff to a third party. I think that's what works out better for them. So I think that my idea of them combining linear broadcast TV with the services already available with a strong streaming on-demand model, and making it so you can watch both on your phones and mobile devices as you go, so that way people don't have to miss a linear broadcast if they don't want to. They'll still miss it because life is obviously busy. But doing that is going to strengthen the television platform, along with content. None of it will matter if the content isn't there. As I've been watching all of these old bumpers and promos, I was just reminded of the wealth of programming on a lot of the networks I used to watch, even before I was born. Their wealth of programming, your ABCs, your NBCs, your CBSs, your formerly WB and UPN, which is now CW, all of your main major networks, all the Discovery networks, the Warner networks, the Disney networks, they all had content that you would go there for. And if they don't realize that that's their goal, and they don't start making programming for that and for streaming combined, and creating an ability for people to watch it both linear broadcast and if they miss the broadcast, then they're not going to succeed, and TV won't be great again. And the quality has to be there. That's the most concerning aspect, is the quality of your programming, because today's TV is not written like yesterday's TV. Today's TV is written by people who are often concerned with the wrong things. They're not concerned with entertaining first and foremost. They're concerned with messaging. They're concerned with how many people of color do we have? How many women do we have? How many people of alternative sexual lifestyles do we have? You know, we're dealing with the whole woke mess right now, and that's affecting a lot of the quality of television overall and film. And so until we get over that hump, we're not going to get back to the quality that we once had. We just aren't. We need to have creators again who are willing to put entertainment first and not their own ideology. So all of those things combined need to happen in order for TV to be great again. And I think it will be. I don't think Hollywood has a choice unless they just abandon TV entirely, which will be a sad day for us all. Because I know plenty of people who want TV to be great again. Again, with the nostalgic deep dives I'm doing, I'm looking at all the comments in YouTube on all of these commercial compilations and promo compilations from the late 90s, early 2000s, 90s, and 80s. And people are talking about how much they miss what television used to be, and how they wish they had that as an escape from the internet, because the internet is so toxic all the time. Everything's so interconnected, and social media is such a rat race, and everything is so crazy and bonkers. People just want to go back and enjoy something that they can just sit down and veg out to and laugh at and just enjoy. And they're not going to get that if we go to all streaming and they're not producing good content for that, and if linear is abandoned, if there's no synergy between the two. They need to combine the two some way and allow people to be able to have that classical experience and the on-demand function anywhere they go. That's what they need to do. If they can't do that, then I don't know that they're going to survive. I don't think TV is going to be great, because already what we're seeing with linear broadcast, at least, and a little bit with streaming, is just a significant lack of new content and quality. Linear TV is pretty much all reruns on the major cable networks. On TV Land, it's reruns of the old shows. There's nothing really that new. Nick at Night has been reduced to Friends. It's all Friends. And same with TBS during the day. It's all Friends. So Friends is running multiple times on multiple networks. So if you start on TBS, by the time you get done on TBS, you go over to Nickelodeon at 9 or so o'clock, and there's Friends over there. You can watch the entire series of Friends in a day or two, if they do it right, or in just a couple of days. And I guess it works for their ratings. I guess that's the only reason they do it. And they do that with FXX. They do, during the weekdays, they do most of the Fox animated series, which I'm okay with, because I like pretty much all of those, except for maybe Family Guy. But I like American Dad, I like Bob's Burgers, I like Simpsons, I like King of the Hill, and I love Futurama. So most of those shows are on FXX throughout the day. I get frustrated whenever it's just movies, because I'm like, dude, you've got FX. That's your movie channel. Why is FXX now just more movies? I guess it's because of the weekend and just the tradition of weekend movies. I get that, but still, I like that they focus more on the Fox animated series. I'd love if they turn that into a Fox animated network. I think that'd be the greatest thing for it. I think that would absolutely boost revenue. It could compete with Adult Swim. It absolutely could. They could take the licenses back and really hurt Adult Swim. But I don't think that they'll do that. I think they just want as much revenue as possible from as many sources as possible, which is why you'll see American Dad on 3 different networks at a time, or 4 different networks at a time. You know? That's the sort of thing I'm talking about that you see with linear broadcast today. If you haven't watched linear broadcast TV since, say, 2010, you'll be in for a shock at how much it's changed. I mean, it's still the same, but the programming, there's no effort. There's no effort being put into the programming whatsoever on pretty much any network except for the digital sub-channels, your MeTVs, your Laughs, your Grits, all of that. So, yes, I do think TV could be great again, but I don't know what their plan is. I don't know what they plan to do in the future. It's concerning how little effort is going into linear broadcast and streaming and creating that perfect synergy between the two. There's so little effort because they're convinced that the streaming is one day going to take off as this massive cash cow, and it could, but most people aren't going to do that because it's just extra expenses, and even for the old stuff, it's not worth it. It really isn't. So Disney's already learning this lesson the hard way. Hulu's doing okay, but it is what it is. So anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments below about the future of television, what you're observing, where you see the roadmap heading, because I frankly don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of linear TV, especially with the introduction of fast TV and the potential there. But I have no earthly clue. I just love TV. I grew up with linear TV, and I really want to see it go back to what it used to be in a sense. I know it never will truly, but I want future generations of kids to feel about Nickelodeon the same way that I and 90s kids felt about Nickelodeon. You know what I'm saying? I want future generations to watch ABC and see great sitcoms again. I want them to have like a TGIF of their own. And a lot of people are saying, oh, that's just ridiculous, that'll never happen, but the networks have to at least be considering rebuilding that sort of stable in order to justify their existence, because otherwise it'll just all disappear and they'll be left with nothing. And YouTube and TikTok will have won. And I don't want that to happen. I want variety and entertainment. That's variety is the spice of life. If I'm just living off of YouTube, or I don't even use TikTok, but if I'm just on YouTube and video sharing sites and social media, sometimes I need a break from that. Just like you used to need a break from TV, sometimes you need a break from the internet. And I think TV is a good alternative when you need a break from all of this, when you need to just watch something that's happening. And I know for a lot of people that's hard because we don't have the attention spans we used to, but we absolutely need to do this again. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I think TV will be great again. I think eventually somebody at these networks and studios will realize there is a way to make it good again. And it involves heavy advertising, it involves spending a lot of money, But if you do it right, you could have the next Seinfeld, you could have the next Friends easily, and it could just revive excitement about TV again. And I really hope that they try. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been Super Koopa TV. Remember, Hollywood doesn't respect you. God bless. Have a good one. Peace.